Hello and welcome to today's lesson. I hope you can guess what it is. Yes, we're going to be starting with polynomials, but before we start working with polynomials, we're going to need to learn how to speak math. Yes, this is a thing, and don't worry, hopefully by the end of this video or tomorrow's in-class assignment, you will join me in using this wonderful secret language. Now, just like learning a new language, math has its own dialect that we use to communicate ideas. This is, for example, how two different mathematicians who speak two completely different languages can still understand each other's maths and equations. Or programmers using programming language in the same fashion. Furthermore, learning how to translate English to math and math to English is an essential skill, but I do have a secret. It does make solving word problems a lot easier. So, first we will start with our basic math operations. So let's take a look at some of the translations we can make based on what someone decides to write in their equation. First of all, we've got the plus sign. Yes, you've seen this multiple times. So let's take a look at the different English ways we can use to represent it. For example, we can use plus, add, larger than, or increase. Next, we've got the minus sign. We've got subtract, minus, negative, decrease by, reduce, smaller than. These are all different ways that a word problem may represent the math symbol of subtraction. Following that, we've got those three symbols there. Now, I'm sure you've seen that X symbol there before. You know that it's multiplication, but in later years, you might start using or seeing the other two. So it's good to know what they mean. And what do they mean? Well, you see it right there on the right. Multiply, product, times of, by. It's a multiplication symbol that uses all of those different words in order to represent it. Next, we've got the division sign. I'm sure everyone's seen it, but I have a fun fact for you. The actual name of this division symbol is an obelus. But it's not at all necessary for you to memorize this because almost no one knows that this is its name. But tidbits of information always fun. Anyways, moving on. This is represented with the English words divides, goes into, separated into, groups of. So if your word problem has any of those words, you'll know what to do. And finally, we've got the equal sign. Again, different ways of representing it, such as equal, equal to, results in, gives you, makes, totals. Those are all different words that we would use to represent that. So now let's talk about some math statements. Let's practice some of those tricks that we used in the previous slide to represent them here. Now, one thing that I'm also going to add here, as you can see at the top, the string of letters, those are called variables. And what's a variable? Well, just a quick recap. A variable is a letter that we use to represent a number that we don't know yet. And that's the key term. We don't know yet. We will know it once we solve the equation. So, usually a variable is represented with the words variable, or an age, a number, a quantity, an unknown number, some amount. It's usually a number that we are looking for. And it will be easy to identify if you look for these English translations. And if you notice, I did put a ... there because you can actually use any and I'll repeat any of the 26 letters in the alphabet to represent an unknown. Furthermore, which we will learn later, you can also use symbols or Greek letters to do the same. But I digress. Moving back to what we're learning here, any letter can be used as a variable, and that's what we need it for. So, looking at that first question statement, we've got 7m. Now, to represent it in English, we would use that sentence you see on the right. Some number multiplied by 7. When we have a number and a letter written beside each other, or, side note, a letter and a letter written beside each other, we automatically assume that it is the operation of multiplication. There you have it. That's 7m represented in English. So if you have a word problem with a sentence that looks similar to this, because again, just like I mentioned, not all sentences will look the same. 7m can be represented with different sentences, but remember, all those sentences mean 7m. So there's not one right English sentence, but there usually is only one right math sentence. All right, next one. We've got some amount take away 3. And now the order of operations is very important here because it's not some amount taken away from 3, it's some amount take away 3. So we know that that 3 is taken away after we find some amount. All right, and then we've got the next one. We've got a quantity that will be larger by 9. Again, a quantity, since it is a quantity that we do not know, it's represented with a letter. And we know that it's going to be larger, which just like the previous slide, we know that larger means plus, and it's going to be larger by 9. So we write that in, and that is the math equation that we have, and the English sentence that is its equivalent. And finally, we have that last scary looking equation, but it's not too scary once we put it into English terms. We've got the product of 3 and an age. Again, we don't know what the age is, or I'm just using this particular example just to represent an unknown. And the word product, if you remember from the previous slide, product means multiplication. So we've got the multiplication of 3 and some number, and we're going to be reducing it by 12. There you have it, in plain English, reduced by 12. So we know that the product has to happen first, order of operations, and then that product between the 3 and the age will be reduced by 12. And finally, we know that the answer has to be 6. Excellent. So now, what your job is to bring in either of the following to class as an entrance slip. So you'll want to either hand in one question you still have about the language of math, so that I can take it up with the class, or one example where you have seen an example of the language of math in your daily life. Excellent. See you tomorrow.